You walked in with your bag and stood at attention, like you belonged here.
The assignment sheet said Barracks 7.
For the record, it was a clerical error. I want that established immediately and without ambiguity, because what followed was the kind of situation that gets retold at every coalition integration mixer for the next decade, and I would prefer the accurate version to be on record somewhere before the embellished one becomes permanent. My name is Private First Class Cole Avery, Terran. Coalition Infantry, Sector 7 assignment, reporting to the Joint Training Facility at Outpost Keldrath 4. The 6-week Interspecies Combat Integration Program. The program was new. Only the second cohort ever run. And the administrative infrastructure supporting it was, charitably speaking, still finding its footing. Assignment packets had been distributed digitally. Barracks assignments had been distributed separately, on paper by a logistics coordinator who had been managing the intake of 400 soldiers across 12 species simultaneously and had, at some point, during that process, transposed 2 room numbers. Barracks 7 was the Vethera female warrior unit. Residential and training block. I was supposed to be in Barracks 11. I did not know this when I pushed open the door at 0730, duffel over my shoulder, rifle slung across my chest, assignment packet in hand, and walked into what I believed was my new quarters for the next 6 weeks. The room was already occupied by approximately 30 green-skinned alien women in full combat armor. I registered several things in rapid sequence. First, the room was significantly more populated than standard coalition infantry barracks protocols suggested it should be at 0730. Second, nobody in the room looked like any of the Terran soldiers I had been briefed to expect in my cohort. Third, every single person in the room had turned to look at me, and not one of them looked confused by my presence. They looked interested, which was somehow more alarming. I did what my training had prepared me to do in uncertain tactical situations. I stood at attention. Private First Class Cole Avery, I said, because if you're going to make a mistake, make it with full commitment. Reporting for assignment. The room was quiet for approximately 2 seconds. Then the one closest to me, tall sage green skin, elaborate braided bun on top of her head, glowing blue eyes that I would later learn were a natural Vethera biological feature and not, as I had initially wondered, some kind of targeting system, leaned forward slightly and looked at me with the expression of someone who had just received an unexpected but not unwelcome delivery. You walked in with your bag and your weapon and stood at attention, she said, like you belonged here. We appreciated the confidence, human. The assignment sheet said Barracks 7. Said, "This is Barracks 7, she confirmed pleasantly. Behind her, the 30-odd Vethera warriors had begun moving, not aggressively, not with any tactical purpose, but in the way that a crowd moves when something interesting is happening at the front and everyone wants a better view. They were coming toward me, slowly, curiously, like I was a new piece of equipment they hadn't seen before and wanted to assess. The Vethera I would learn over the following 6 weeks were one of the coalition's most decorated combat species. Fierce, disciplined, and possessed of a cultural tradition that placed enormous value on what they called first presence. The way you entered a space, particularly an unfamiliar one, told them everything they needed to know about your character. Walking in unannounced, standing at attention and announcing yourself clearly even by mistake was, by Vethra standards, exactly correct behavior. I did not know this yet. What I knew was that 30 armed alien warriors were walking toward me and I had nowhere to go. Because the door was behind me and retreating felt worse than staying. So I stayed. The lead warrior, whose name I would learn, was Zethkara, unit commander, 11 years of active deployment, more combat decorations than I could read from this distance, stopped approximately 1 meter away and looked at me with the measuring attention of someone conducting a serious evaluation. "You are in the wrong barracks," she said. "Yes," I agreed. "You knew this when you came in. I figured it out about 2 seconds after I came in. But you announced yourself anyway. It seemed worse not to." Zethkara studied me for a long moment. Behind her, the assembled Vethra unit had settled into a loose semicircle, watching with expressions ranging from amused to genuinely curious. "What unit?" she asked. "Terran Coalition Infantry. Sector 7. Combat experience. 2 deployments. Outer Belt, then the Dravith. Retrieval operation." Something shifted in her expression at that. Slight but visible. Dravith had been a difficult operation. The kind that made it onto casualty reports. "You survived Dravith," she said. "I did." She looked at my rifle, my duffel, my face. Then she turned and said something to her unit. In Vethra, a language I didn't speak yet, delivered in a tone that was clearly a statement, rather than a question. The unit's response was a sound I would eventually recognize as the Vethra version of collective approval, a short, sharp harmonic exhale that meant something closer to "this one will do" than anything a direct translation could capture. Zethkara turned back to me. "Barracks 11 is the 3rd building west," she said. "Your actual unit is there." "Thank you, Commander. However," he paused. "The integration program runs joint training from 0800 to 1200 daily. Your unit and mine share the combat simulation block." She looked at me with those luminous blue eyes, completely unreadable. "I expect you will perform at the level your entrance suggested." It was, I understood, not a compliment. It was a standard. She was telling me she had taken a measure of me and expected me to meet it. "Understood, Commander," I said. I picked up my duffel, nodded to the room, which responded with a ripple of those blue glowing eyes tracking me to the door, and walked back out into the corridor. I found Barracks 11 without difficulty. My actual unit was inside, 12 Terran infantry soldiers who had been wondering where I was. "You're late," said Sergeant Marsh. "Clerical error," I said. "I'll explain later." I didn't explain later. Some stories are better kept for the right moment. The right moment arrived 3 days into joint training, when Zethkara walked into the combat simulation block at 0800 with her full unit. Behind her,